What does world-class real estate look like to you?
It's about creating relationships,
consistent communication.
Estate agency with a great culture, who care for their people, who care for their clients, who care for their customers, without just looking at the number at the end of the commission check.
I think it's about amazing customer service.
It's about people, not property.
This episode is brought to you in partnership with Iceberg Digital.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the World Class Real Estate Podcast. We've got our first guest of 2026. We're actually recording in 2026 because obviously Stephen started the year. We've got our first guest of 2026 joining us today for a really frank, honest conversation. If you don't know by now, I'm Mark Worrell. I'm joined by Ian Macbeth. How are you, mate?
I'm good. It's race week for me, so I'm in race mindset, but we've also got a massive event or tomorrow as well for the whole group. So all the Avocado Squad, all the other businesses, super excited for that. We've got a GB Paralympian gold medalist talking about resilience. We've got an accountant talking on to highlight some of the changes that have happened since Labour have been in as well. And we're doing some stuff around personal upgrades and controllable targets and stuff like that. So this is a massive week, actually. I'm a little bit worn out because it's a lot of prep work that goes into these things, but I'm really, really excited for the event and then the race on the weekend. So good. How about yourself, Mark? You good?
Yeah, good. Yeah, it feels like the market is purring, starting to take off. I got told off yesterday by my mother because I was moaning that the market is only purring and hasn't taken off, and she had to remind me that actually it's only the third week of January. We've had loads of valuations, loads of good instructions, but I'm like, right, come on, we need to sell some shit. So as I say that word, I should probably give you a bit of a warning for today because there is some choice language in this episode. When we introduce the guest, you will no doubt understand why. But quick football chat, very quick football chat before we dive in, if that's all right. Ian, you've got a new manager. How's that looking? Too early to say, or
potentially too early to say, but I like it. I was a big fan of Maresca, and I was sad to see him go, but I understood why he went. But I've also been following, obviously, the Strasbourg journey because they're connected to Chelsea. So I think in the first 4 games, he probably couldn't have done more than he's done. So yeah, we'll see how we end the season, I would say.
Interesting to see that. I've got a bit of a personal thing. So did I say last week that I took the kids to the new stadium for the first proper game? We went to watch the FA Cup and the kids went and absolutely loved it. And then football was on Sunday, and bizarrely Everton beat Aston Villa. And actually it's the first time, following on from going to the game and really enjoying it and getting into the atmosphere, seeing the friends and the cousins and that, they actually sat and watched the game. Well, not the whole game, but extended periods of the game, and both my boys sat with me, and I thought, do you know what? That's what it's about. Them actually starting to enjoy and feel a part of it. So other than illness in the household, the family's all good. Work is starting to kick off. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty hopeful about this. We're recording this on the 20th, so we've just been past Blue Monday, which I think is complete utter rubbish. Did a CrossFit comp at the weekend, which is called Battle of the Blues, always aimed at beating that so-called Blue Monday. I hate it when the media put stuff out like that, because the way I'm feeling at the moment is positive, enthusiastic, and eager for the year to get going and really kick in. And I think predictions are still the same. Hopefully no tariffs come in to change any of that, but I'm feeling really positive, and the people that I'm speaking to in the market are all really positive and buoyant as well. Is that the same what you're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. Valuations have gone mental. I mean, to put some context, we would in a normal day we would see 3, 4, 5 valuations come through the website on a normal day. At the moment, we're seeing anywhere from 15 to 18.
Yeah.
So it's that difference. But I mean, with the episode and with the guests that we've got coming on today, volume is definitely not going to be the topic of conversation. You did say some language, and it's not a warning for me for a change. It's a warning for John. But at the same time, it's because he's so fucking passionate about what he's talking about, which is nice to see. It's nice to see an agent that is so different to the norm, that's carved out such a niche part of the market. He's done it through his mindset, his focus, his willingness and desire to improve the industry, but he's done it through TikTok ultimately from lockdown. Really cool story of how that erupts and started. And I haven't checked how many followers he's got on TikToks, but it's tens of thousands. Like it's getting towards 100,000 people that follow him on TikTok. And as estate agents, you might look and go, what? But if you've got that amount of reach and awareness on a social media channel, you've got to sit up and listen. So it's one of those episodes where I'd say get the notebook out, because there's going to be a lot of talk that you might not understand as a normal agent. There's a lot of stuff that you want to understand, you know, in weeks that come past. And John Savage has got that military background as well, which we also have a really interesting topic of conversation at the end of the podcast. So do stick with it, because a lot of it all comes back full circle together with the end of the podcast. But really good industry commentator, I would say, and very, very passionate. Would you say, Mark, podcast?
This is not a podcast that lacks passion. John's been on a couple of times before, and he's always full of energy, full of passion, very enthusiastic. And that really comes across. And I think when you speak to somebody that is that passionate about helping people, about improving the industry, about, you know, he comes at it from a very specific angle in terms of how he thinks of estate agents and that side of things. But you can't knock the enthusiasm, you can't knock the passion. It's always really eye opening to hear that. And I'm really interested for people to hear the feedback from the TikTok and that, because that's not something that we've done as a business, or something that I've done. So yeah, I think this is definitely an episode that people can learn from. So let's get him in, shall we?
Let's do it. John, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Oh, mate, brilliant. Honestly, this is an honor. This is an honor. You know, I see your videos and I see what you're putting out there. Same for you, Mark. And I'm like, oh my God, I've been invited on the show. This is incredible. But yeah, no, life's good. Everything's good, mate. So yeah, I'm really pleased to be here.
Nice. No, and returning the conversation, the roles are reversed. Obviously, I jumped on yours, which we'll talk about as well, kind of your podcast, which I love the phrasing for. So it would be nice to kind of ask you probably a couple of similar questions to what you spat at me as well. But there's always one that we kick off with, Mark, isn't there, eh?
Yeah, John, welcome back. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll start, as we always do. What does world-class real estate look like to you now in 2026? First time I've asked that.
Yeah, well, integrity and excellence. That's what it looks like to me. So integrity in the sense that my number one rule is always do what's right, even if it hurts. So if that means I've got this beautiful, stunning property that's like going to look amazing on the portals, look amazing on my website, in my socials, but I'm not selling it, then I'm not doing it. That's where the integrity, I don't care how much I'm getting paid. If I'm not going to be able to sell it, then
you're not getting paid, are you? If you can't sell it, really?
Absolutely. And the other thing is, well, excellence. Okay, so if I'm going to have the integrity to do what's right, even if it hurts, well, what about excellence then? And so what I mean by that is, do I understand buyers? Do I understand people? Do I understand their motivations for wanting to buy a certain property? But equally, do I understand the buying and selling process? Do I understand the level of marketing that needs to actually happen? Do I understand the pricing strategy that needs to happen? So if I know all of those things, but I don't choose to do it because I'm going for the instruction instead, then there's no amount of marketing that is going to get me the money that seller wants. Yeah, it's just not going to happen. So if those three elements are not right, the agent, the marketing, and the pricing strategy, and if I don't understand consumer psychology, we're dead and buried. We're dead and buried. Because I'm not going to, like you say, and I'm not going to earn any money, right? So, and selfishly, if I know what good looks like, why would I do anything different? Because doing something different, I'm not going to get paid. And that would just make me ill. So, yeah.
So I think that the integrity thing is a really interesting one, but both those integrity and excellence are sort of internal stuff that you can talk about on the podcast. How do you demonstrate those values to your clients, and how do you get across that those, you know, the integrity and the excellence are really important to you, and actually how that can stand you apart in a very muddied field, probably?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Mark. And that is a great question, right? And so I'm just going to tell everybody how I do it. And I'm hoping all the good agents out there go, wow, I never even thought of doing something like that, because it's almost the secret sauce, right? And the secret sauce for me is this. There are properties historically similar to maybe what I'm going to value, right? That over the last 18 months have sold for X, right? So they've sold for X. Well, does that mean historically, because they sold for X over the last 18 months, they're going to get Y, or they're going to get, the money that the seller wants because of previous sales? Not really. It doesn't always happen. And what we're seeing in the market right now is those property prices that, yeah, maybe 2 years ago got 800 grand, but actually the price right now is probably 750, maybe 725. But how do you tell the truth and get away with it? So what I do, right, is basically say, look, before I go to or speak to any seller, I am looking at their competition within just simple Rightmove, postcode, price bracketing, number of bedrooms, 0 miles. What's the competition? Quarter mile, half mile, 1 mile, 3 miles, 5 miles, 10 miles. And at, say, 1 mile, there's only 14 other properties, not a lot of competition. But next town down, and a 10-mile radius is now over, say, 500 or 700 other similar properties. So I asked the seller the question, what are you going to do, knowing this information? Because property's not in isolation, Tom Panos. So property's not in isolation, it's in competition. So do they agree with me on that? Because if it was in isolation, they could name any money they want. But competition means they can't. So I get the agreement first. Then I go, right now you have X number of properties currently competing with yours to attract all the very best buyers. And my question to you, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, what are you going to do to attract all the very best buyers away from what they're currently looking at to come and see yours instead? So I'm putting it on the actual seller, right? Because it means that that's how I demonstrate integrity, in the sense that I'm not going for the instruction. I'm not trying to win the instruction. If anything, I'm trying to push myself away from winning the instruction. I'm going for the second sale. So by asking or demonstrating the property is not in isolation, it's in competition, then demonstrating how many other properties are currently on the market that they are competing with, and then asking them what they're going to do to get all the very best buyers away from what they're currently looking at to come and see theirs instead, suddenly the penny drops and they're like, oh, actually, what am I going to do? Actually, that agent who's just said to me that they've got, oh yes, we've got loads of buyers at 800 grand in the top drawer. Yeah. You just got to sign this 16 to 22 week contract. Yeah. And then because we're going to have to work really hard at the money we're telling you we can achieve, versus what I'm saying is, and I'm trying to lose, obviously, right? So by trying to lose, if I win first time, guess what happens? I maximize the value of my client's home in real life. So I beat market value in real life. We're not chasing the market down like with endless price reductions. And I get paid. Equally at the same time, though, my ideal client is a second-time seller, somebody that's on the market right now, massively frustrated, hates the industry, hates estate agents, and now they've got lived experience. So it's easier for me to have a proper conversation with them. Yeah. And then, of course, if they have to come back to me later, my door is always open. But of course, I'm caveating that conversation, that evaluation. Look, if you come back to me in 5 or 6 months' time, that's absolutely fine. But that 700 grand I told you I could get, that may be in jeopardy if you do come back to me. Is that okay? Absolutely fine, John, no problem. So when they go with idiot estates who said things that sound nice to win the instruction, and now they have that lived experience, I'm able to say, do you remember when I told you that I may not be able to get you the 700 grand? And they go, yeah. And I go, right, I may not be able to get you the 700 grand. It's fine, John. Yeah, it's fine. Let's do business. So that's what I mean. I'm deliberately pushing people away from me to do business. The other thing as well, just as a side note, my funnel, most of my clients, if not all my clients, come through TikTok. But then when they're going through it, they have to fill out a 65 question Google form before they can get on a call with me. That's madness.
I was going to talk about that because from what you were saying in terms of the information that you're sharing with that call, that meeting, and the type of prep work that potentially you would do, it kind of almost sounded like two parts to it, really. From your prep work, you were doing market research through the eyes of a potential buyer rather than the eyes of an estate agent, which is what most estate agents will do when they're going out to a market appraisal valuation. Is obviously they're looking at competition, but they're looking through the eyes of an agent. What's the seller seeing as the top price? What are they looking at? So we're looking at it slightly different, whereas you're deep diving into, if I'm a buyer, what properties am I buying before I buy this one? And why is this one not going to get sold? Whereas we're kind of doing it the other way around normally as an agent. So I love that. It makes sense. But I was going to ask, what information are you gathering and how are you gathering it before you're having that conversation? But it comes from the Google sheet by the sounds of it. What sort of questions are you asking in there?
So one of the big questions I ask is, or three questions, I obviously know because they're sending me the link of the current listing, which enables me to look at not just the photography, but also the copy as well. So it's a massive bugbear of mine when I see copy that is features of the property. People are buying lifestyle. People are buying status upgrades. They're not actually, and it sounds mental, but they're not actually buying a house. Mm-hmm. They're not actually buying bricks and mortar. They're buying a status upgrade, a lifestyle change. So who is the ideal client for this particular property? And that's something I do later on when I'm winning instructions. We do those client marketing calls, right? I know straight away, not just looking at the photography, looking at that marketing, then looking at how much other competition is currently that property got. And then I'm going to property data, and then I'm basically going, right, okay, this property, this size, detached, how many bedrooms, does it have parking, so on and so forth. And then that gives me the last 18 months worth of sales. So then I can start going, right, building a picture of what is actually happening in their market over the last 18 months. Why haven't they sold? And it goes back down to those three things I mentioned earlier: the pricing strategy, the marketing, and the agent. And so I'm looking at all of those things before I get on a call. But the three questions that are in there really is, what's the current market price? What do you think it's worth? And what is your walkaway price? So I'm now
questions they are, aren't they?
Yeah. And then so what that gives me is, right, number one, if this person has filled in this form and now they're on a call with me, that's brilliant, because people that haven't filled in the form, I'm telling them, if you don't give that to me minimum 24 hours before the call cannot go ahead, right? But when they're filling it out, obviously they're now obviously very frustrated. They're very like, I need to get this sorted. This is now a big, big problem for me. My life is not going as I want my life to go because I can't sell my house. So they give me the info, and I don't use those pricing elements against them. I'm using it as a gauge to see really where they are. I spoke to a lady yesterday and she said her place is worth 800 grand all day long. She's been on the market now for a best part of a year. She's had 4 viewings.
At 800 grand, presumably.
And it got reduced down to 750. And she's like, I just wouldn't accept anything less than 750. And I'm like, but I can't see any evidence beyond 670 grand. And I'm not from your area, but I'm thinking like a surveyor thinks. I'm also, like you said, Ian, looking through the eyes of a buyer as well, right? And I can't see it. And actually, a 10-mile radius, you've got 755 other detached and semi-detached 3-bedroom homes, or 3 to 4 bedroom homes between 650 and 800 grand, that within a 10-mile radius. That is a lot of choice. So how are we getting there? And then when you look at the historical evidence, the pounds per square footage would suggest that 796 grand is the right money on paper. But then you look to see what the average of those properties are actually might be marketed for today, which is 748. Then drill down further and go, well, actually, what's truly selling right now, and where is that money sitting? And yeah, I can't see anything beyond. I mean, and that's my question to her would be, is would you accept 700? If I could get you 700 grand, would that be in the right ballpark? Or are you just going to hold on to your property?
Which ultimately decides whether you do business or not, right? Because this is the problem with estate agency, is that the 1 in 2 properties, we do all the work on, we do a lot of work on, but people don't get paid. The way that you're talking obviously is very different to a high street estate agency business plan, or the way an office would operate, be it independent or corporate. And the reason for that is they need volume to make a business profitable. But obviously with that volume comes a lot of fallout. So you do a lot of the work for free and you don't get paid for it. With the way that you're kind of operating, do you feel that if you were to build yourself into an office, that would still be possible? Or do you think because you're operating in a self-employed model, you know, with EXP, that it's only possible because you're in a brokerage style that you can be so choosy and strong on your fees? Because we spoke off camera and, you know, you're 2%, that's it. Like there's no deviating or negotiating from that. That's what you charge for your service. Do you think that what you're talking about from an agency, you're just playing in a different sort of game to other estate agents? Or do you think there's ever a chance where we can see those efficiencies actually come into sort of normal estate agency, if you want to call it that?
So I don't think it will, and that's a great question. I've got two little stories around that. I don't think it will ever become truly the norm because a lot of business owners, they're too worried about what another agent thinks or what another agent would say. And they're also thinking, you know, the backdrop of office costs, staff salaries, business rates, corporation tax. Oh my God, I'm not even making any money for myself. So I'm just going to say things that sound nice to get the instruction and then hopefully get some sort of market share and then drive sellers down on price and then eventually get it sold. That's the playbook, right?
Yeah.
I was very lucky, and this is what I say to a lot of people when they're getting into agency, right, for the first time. John, I want to come and work with you. Okay, have you got a couple of years experience cutting your teeth on the high street or in a corporate? No. Go and get it. Go and get it. Yeah. But equally at the same time, you need to interview the people that you're likely to work with. Now, I lucked out because I had a couple of bosses when I became a sales manager that were very much like, do you know what? Go for the second sale, which is where that comes from. Meaning, it doesn't matter that you're getting beaten up and spat out right now by other agents that are accusing you of trying to sell property cheap or trying to sell their property to one of your developer mates or trying to make a quick buck on the side. That don't matter. Let's learn to tell the truth and get away with it, right? So that enabled me to be on the high street and not give two flying fucks what a seller thought, because if they were wrong, they were wrong. So my reputation ended up preceding itself in the sense that it was like, that's John Savage. If you want to get your house sold, you give it to him. If you want a vanity metrics, don't even bother calling him, right? And that was basically the way it was, and I was lucky. Fast forward though to the new boss that bought that franchise for that particular office. There was a lady, Freya, that come in. She had her property on the market with me. I previously agreed this flat in Ladbroke Grove for 534 grand. The market was falling. She then wanted to resell because she pulled out the sale when I got it agreed for a full asking price. She then pulled out. Then she came back and said, right, can we get that 334 grand again? And it was like, the most we're going to get is 500. The most we're going to get is 500. I said to her, as she said to me, but the other agent around the corner reckons I can get 585. And it was like, if they are telling you they can get you 585 and they're absolutely adamant, because she kept on pushing it, I said, I'm going to rip the contract up right now and I'm going to invite you to go round to next door and go with that agent and get the 585. Because if that's what they're telling you, then I'm not going to stand in your way. So she said, all right then. And she left the office. Now, the new owner, he heard that conversation and said to me, from now on, I want you to overvalue everything by 10 to 15% to make sure that we win the instruction, right? And I was like, within about 30 minutes, I'd spoke to my wife, asked if I could hand in my resignation. And I was like, right, we've got about 4.5 months worth of rent to pay. Can I hand in my resignation? And that's exactly what I did. Because that moment, up to that moment when he said that, the 63 valuations I'd gone on that year, the 44 that came to market, I was instructed and sold 41 of them for over 100% of their asking price. So I was like, why the fuck am I now going to change my tactic for you that you don't understand the industry? And that's why, yes, my way of doing it scared the living daylights out of him, because he was thinking about those office costs, those staff salaries, and he spent a load of money on buying this franchise. He doesn't want to not be in the game. And competing against over 100 agents, that scared him. But I was like, no, mate, the marketing is all wrong. The marketing is all wrong. And our ideal client, for example, if I go on 10 valuations and I only win 2 of those, which is why I'm so strict today. But if I go on 10 valuations and I win 2, as far as I'm concerned, I've not lost 8. I've won 100% of my market, because we didn't have, our marketing was thinking of selling. That was our marketing.
Yeah.
Our marketing wasn't talking to our ideal type of seller. Yeah. And that's why the people that are reaching out and filling these Google forms in with me now, I'm not saying anything different to what I was saying 15 years ago. I'm saying exactly the same thing. Yeah. And it's just, but there are people out there that want bullshit. They absolutely want bullshit. There are people out there that says, I would never use you because you swear in your videos. And I say, good, because I want to spend the time to impress you, because nothing I would do will impress you. And it's just like, one lady said that to me once, and I was like, whereabouts are you? And she said, Notting Hill. And I said, basically what you're saying is my competitors average 96% of value, and obviously selling in a time frame you control, because I swear, as a matter of principle, you won't give it to me, even though I'm doing 100% of market value, effectively paying for myself. And you won't give it to me. No. All right, fine. No problem. I'm not going to waste my time. Yeah. And that's really how I see agency is, if you are that lying, horrible, dirty twat, stinking estate agent, right? There will be sellers out there that will love you for it. There'll be sellers out there that will love you for it. Yeah, because they are that way inclined as well. The problem is that when all agents portray themselves to be experts, and 3 agents turn up and they're all wearing nice suits, they're all saying nice things, they've all got nice cars, they're all saying the same as what each other are saying, because they're not actually valuing the property. They're basically competing against what they think another agent's going to say. But 2 of those sellers really believed, out of the 10, 2 of those sellers really believed that they were working with the real deal that actually was going to produce the results they said they were going to produce, because they just wanted that, that person full of integrity. And why would they believe an estate agent, a human being, is lying to them? They don't. And it's not their fault, the seller's fault, right? But they end up employing people that realized, oh my God, I've been hoodwinked and I've still got 16 weeks left to run on this contract. Shit.
Yeah. It's good for you, John, that you had the 2 polar opposite managers. Obviously, the one that came in and said, right, overvalue 10-15%, it's got an agency background. They bought the franchise because they got an agency background. Because it's not something that, if we think about it, if that person had no agency background and they'd come from IT or whatever, they'd sold their business, they're going, right, I like property, I'm going to be an agent and going to buy this franchise, which happens all the time. That's not in there. That's, no one thinks of that as a business plan. I know what I'm going to do. I get paid when they sell. I'm going to go and overprice them to make it hard. It just, if you actually think about it, not as an estate agent, it's the craziest plan. Was the original boss agency background, but just different framing in his mind, or did he actually not come from an agency at all? The first boss.
The first boss actually came from retail, and then he got into estate agency as a negotiator.
Right.
Then did really well. Funny enough, his boss was a little bit where's my money? Where's my money? Where's my money? Yeah. Whereas this guy was like, oh, I don't like that. So when he bought the franchise with another guy, the pair of them were very much like they had been under the umbrella of the original boss, both of them. And so they experienced that and they were like, oh, if I'm running an agency, I'm not going to run it like that. Yeah. And so don't get me wrong, it takes balls to allow someone to go out there and say what they want to say. Yeah. That takes courage. Now, of course, I could only do that for so long. So I had better start delivering, because I could only be truthful for so long. And if I'm still losing all of these instructions or potential instructions, then it's just like, yeah, I'm going to get sacked, right? So I'm obviously having to get these instructions on the market. I'm having to deliver what I'm telling sellers I can deliver, and I'm having to be accountable, and I'm having to obviously step my game up big time. Otherwise, I'm going to be let go, right? But yeah, lucky for me, I was working with those guys that had been in that environment where it was show me my money, that they experienced that and they thought, oh, we're not going to run an agency like that. But what came with that, though, was massive levels of accountability, was around asking the right questions, was around, not saying things that sound nice, was around making sure you were on top of every file, so there was a lot of that as well. I couldn't just go have a phone call and not actually write in the file what actually happened or what's been said. Yeah. A lot different to what it is like today in terms of computers and technology. Just in case we got called out for any wrongdoing, of course.
Yeah.
But it was a good experience.
We got to talk about TikTok, because TikTok. Talk me through the TikTok start, plan, now strategy and funnel. Just talk me through how that evolved. And also, you were talking about going out and being savage with what you were saying to sellers. The name came first or the mindset came first? Did you change your name, or is that always, but is it just, you were called Savage and you just went, I'm going to be the Savage agent, like just out of interest? It's always been your name?
No, yeah. So Savage, yes, that's always been my name, right? So yeah, Savage by name, Savage by nature, but that wasn't necessarily the intention. My background is ex-military, right? So I served in the parachute regiment. And again, one of the phrases that we'd have is a bullet doesn't stop just because it's gone past you. So that means that if I'm point man, yeah, I need to be alert. I need to be seeing absolutely everything in front of me, because if I don't, and one of my muckers gets slot straight in the face because I didn't see the enemy, I didn't see the threat, right? That is a problem. So back in 2020, during lockdown, I'm sitting there in the garden and I'm like, I am seeing so many agents, like just constantly for years, talking shit, like literally to win instructions. And I thought, you know what? I need to do something about this. And I saw TikTok and I thought, I wonder how this works. So I asked my kids, at like 44 years old, I asked my kids, how does TikTok work? Like, what is it? Should I be using Snapchat or whatever? I didn't know what to do. So there's no captions, there's no hashtags, there's no nothing. It was literally record. And I thought, I'm going to tell the world how a state agency really works. That was the only intention. It wasn't anything beyond that. It was just tell buyers and sellers exactly what the threats are to them and how to overcome them, or what to look out for before they instruct an agent. I got a comment the other day, and the lady wrote a review for me. She said, I've watched all of your videos, and I just want to tell everybody that I've just got 28 grand more than I thought I was actually going to get because I've listened to all of your videos. And I'm like, yes. John Savage is not going to sell every single property in England and Wales. That ain't going to happen, right? But it quickly grew into, I'm not saying anything different to what I'd be telling people when I first got into agency, when I knew what I was doing, right? Back then, there's nothing different I say today, yeah? But the intention was the same, which was to make sure that if I could get into everybody's heads, because I remember myself and my other colleague, John, 2007, having a conversation. We're standing in Kensal Rise and we're looking at all these agents mugging sellers, literally mugging them, right, in broad daylight, but the sellers don't know it. And we're like, how do we get inside everyone's heads? How do we get our message out there? And we didn't know.
TikTok.
We couldn't know.
So
yeah.
So that's you're spreading the story and the integrity further and wider using the platform. Talk us through the funnel, and I'm really interested in that you said most of your inquiries now are coming through that. So the videos are typically you giving the advice that you've given for years, but how have you built that consistency and turned it into a really strong business generating tool?
So the beauty of TikTok is people ask questions, and every morning 8 through 9, right, is literally me answering their questions. And if I get to answer, say, 3 to 5 questions in that day, then it doesn't matter to me whether that video is going to go viral, whether it's going to get tens of thousands of views, or whether it's going to get 200 views. Even within that 200 views, they'll mean something to someone that goes, right, I can take some action from that. And that's it. So I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm not doing polished videos. I'm not doing videos that look really sexy and nice and amazing. It is literally, there's a question, I'm answering it. There's a question, I'm answering it. Now, I do put my own slant on it as well. My own slant being zero bullshit. Yeah, because that's the name, Zero BS Estate Agency. So if that's the case, then I'm going to give you the zero BS version of what you need to hear right now. That person doesn't need to use me. And one of the other things that I deliberately don't do, you don't see, or you see hardly any call to actions. There's hardly any calls to actions. I'm not on there going, oh, and buy my products and buy this and buy that, right? If I'm doing a call to action, it is purely on the basis of, guys, don't make this mistake. Go to the link in my bio right now and download my ebook, How to Sell Your House Fast Without Underselling, with an agent you can trust in a time frame you control. In there is the playbook. Read the book. If you don't want to get on a call with me, read the book. Read the book. Yeah. And it's because I'm sick of these mistakes that are so unnecessary. You don't even need to use me. Read the book. And a lot of people trust me because I'm not all about buy my product. Yeah. I'm all like jab, jab, right hook, value with the jabs, and then the right hook. When I've built enough credibility where maybe someone who's just seen me for the first time, they go, actually, do you know what? I am going to go to the link in his bio. I am going to book a call with him. And that goes on to the next thing, which is the funnel, right? So there's 2 funnels, or 2 Google Forms. And I think if you're an agent and you're not doing this, you absolutely must do this, right? Is have a Google form. So my for sale but still not sold form, that's got 65 questions, right? And the sellers have to answer those questions. If they don't answer those questions, of course, I see whether they've answered them or not. And if they don't answer them, I'm not getting on the call with them. Yeah. And I will tell them, if you don't do this 24 hours before we get on the call, I can't help you until you've actually filled in this form. Right. So I'm repelling people deliberately. And the same for the coming to market. That's probably just about 20 questions because, of course, they've not gone through the same pain yet as somebody that's on the market right now. And then off the back of that, I'm getting on a call. And even on that call, I'm still not trying to win the instruction. I'm trying to understand what it is they're trying to achieve. And I'm also then, does that work for me? Can I actually help in that? I got a person in Bournemouth. I really want you to sell my place. I can't help them. So I told her I can't help them.
Why can't you help them?
Say again.
Why can't you help them?
Because they need 180 grand. The real money is probably 150. And just within that mile radius, there's almost 1,000 other flats they're trying to sell. And I'm like, this is like, can't you just keep it and rent it? And they've got financial difficulties as well. And so they give me all the information. Yeah, so I know them, and I'm like, I will give you the best advice I possibly can give you right now if you're really thinking about selling. But at the moment, your this is a race to the bottom, and then you're going to pay me a fee, and then and all of these things, and I'm just like, this is just going to be a car crash for them. So it's not that I don't want to help; it's just that they'll have to have boundaries in place that I can't help everybody. Equally, the other side of the coin as well may not have any financial difficulties, but just like the example I gave earlier, well, my place is worth 800 grand all day long. And I'm like, well, that's going to be a massive struggle because that seller would always be like, yeah, but I've come down 130 grand. No, you haven't.
I was going to ask you about that actually. When you talked about the pricing conversation, pushing it onto the seller, you must get, and presumably this is why you prefer second time instructions, you must get first time round where they've anchored to that price and they don't think that they have to do anything, or everyone thinks well, my house has got a bigger garden, our kitchen's nicer, all of that stuff. So you must know as soon as they speak whether they're the right client at that point. And then you mentioned it then, sometimes people have to go through a bit of pain to realise, don't they? And that's why the second time sellers presumably...
That's why my ideal client is a second time seller, because I am ultimately a dirty, horrible, stinking, twatted estate agent as well. At the end of the day, right, we are in, whether we like it or not, we are in a negative reputation industry.
Yep.
We are disliked before we say a word, and we're distrusted before we open up a single front door, right? And so, again, well, why do I stop any viewings happening from the day that I market a property to the day the first viewings is 2 weeks minimum? I will not allow anybody inside that property for 2 weeks. Why? Because I want the 3 waves of buyers to come and see it. The first wave that the agent knows because they're up to trot on the market, they're actively looking, they just missed out on a couple of properties that they've offered on, but they really, really hot, right? Second wave of buyers. These are buyers that are sort of a bit of voyeurs. They're looking online, they're making a few inquiries, but they're not really making any moves. Then you've got the third wave, which are the tire kickers, right? The tire kickers, the ones that are going to lowball, the vultures, waiting for somebody to really fail, and then they're going to come in with an offer even less, right? Because when a buyer says, how much interest has there been? And the agent says, oh, there's been loads, but it's been on for 4 months. So I'm like looking around thinking, well, why the fuck haven't you sold it if there's been loads of interest? And when we do in viewings sporadically and buyers aren't seeing each other, well, my client's property just becomes one of a number of loads of other properties, right? But if everyone's now seeing each other there, I'm not telling people what to offer. I'm not even telling them to offer. I'm just making sure that they are right for this property. And I think based on my qualification, they're likely to offer. And then they can make their own decisions about what they do next. So I think it's, recognizing that we are in a negative reputation industry. We're distrusted, we're disliked, and then letting the market do the talking. When it comes down to that first time seller, they've not experienced what good looks like. They've not worked with, say, you, Mark, or they've not worked with Avocado Property. So they don't know what goods look like. So they trust what lying, horrible, dirty agents telling them. And they don't realize that signing that contract is a death sentence in most instances, right? So once they've experienced it, they're like, oh my God, I'm not doing that again. Where's safety? Yeah, we need to get moved. So they're more moldable, more shapeable. That said, though, what's really interesting, the house I've got coming to market in Worcester, that's coming to market first time. But the sellers there, they completely believe everything that I stand for because they align with everything I stand for as well. So it's not like I'm reinventing the wheel. They're like, I like the way this guy thinks. I like the way he's turned up. For example, you guys in your pink tops at Avocado, look at me. I don't look like an agent either. Yeah. It's just about being real and human. The house in Norwich, that was on the market a little while ago. But again, the guy's ex-military. He's like, fucking, I wish I found you first time round. I would be working with these dickheads. And, you know, if I'd have just met you first time round, I'd be done and dusted by now. Do you know what I mean? And it's, and so again, it's affinity. Do people even like the way I think? Because one of my other rules is never speak to anyone until they know you're a someone. And I've made that mistake even a couple of times recently where I've booked in a call with someone. I've not made them do the Google form because a seller of mine was on a TikTok live and said, if you use anybody to sell your home, use John Savage, right? And that person's then booked in a call with me. They've asked me how it works, and I've told them how it works. And then they've said this, the cheek of it. They went, yeah, I'm not sure we agree with that. So I asked the question. I said, can I ask what you guys do for a living? And they went, and they told me, right? And what they do for a living, they work within the NHS, within the mental health space. And what they do is some really seriously good work, like really good work. Both of them got 20 plus years experience. So I asked them, I said, but listen, do you reckon within the next sort of like 12 hours, pretend it's a Monday, I would like be able to do your jobs? And they went, oh, no. So I said, so what makes you think what I just said was wrong?
What did he say?
Savage question. I love a savage question.
Exactly, because it got my heckles up because I was like, fucking hell. But that wasn't really their fault. That was really my fault because I skipped a step. I didn't ask them to go through the right steps and the right processes to really sort of get to understand who I am. Because if they knew who I was and what I stood for through my videos or through the funnels, then they may have actually gone, do you know what, John? No, you're not for me. And then that would have been great because I'd have still kept my integrity. I would have still kept my self-esteem. I'd have still felt good about myself. Instead, I've left that call. My wife went, you ain't working with them, are you? And I went, absolutely fucking not.
But you learned the lesson.
Yeah. I think this is a great point for estate agents. It's a real realization moment. And I got a story around that as well when we started. But understanding that when you do your marketing and you do your brand awareness and you do your messaging and you call out your audience, when you do it right, everything is easier. But when you don't have someone that's been following that journey, listening to the messaging, watching the content that's not connected to the brand, everything's much more difficult. And I remember when we started Avocado, within the first 9 months, we'd obviously done a lot of content, we'd had lockdown, and anytime we got a website val, me and Mike are just going out and we're just signing them up straightforward, because all of the content led back to the website. They booked the valuation. I've seen your videos. I love what you're doing. I love the difference. I love the blah, 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 blah. So we just sign them up. No problem at all. Have good conversation. They agree to use us. The only difficulty in that valuation is agreeing that we're going to charge a higher fee than the other 2 people they've had out. But fine, you can overcome that. They see the value. But we also set up with Zoopla. And part of the package with Zoopla in the first year was that we would get free valuation leads through Zoopla. And every time I went to a Zoopla valuation, they hadn't been through that process of just another agent. And they didn't know why I was turning up and looking different. And they hadn't seen my videos. And I was winning half of the Zoopla ones. And I was saying to Mike, like, these Zoopla ones, they're fucking tough work, you know, like I'm struggling on these Zoopla ones. And I've been an agent for 20 years. So versus another, 25-year-old down the road at a high street, I should kick everyone's ass. But it's not as simple as that. And I was like, I'm just not winning them. And in the end, I was like, I actually don't want to go to the Zoopla valuations. But it all came down to the fact that as an agent, regardless of what your brand is, what your message is, if you're a high street agent, you do volume and you're a market leader and that's your USP, well then fine, but you have to make sure people know what you are. And what you just said there is, as that story is so important for agents, because we miss that so much. It's such a simple, easy thing to fix. I think you said in the early part of the podcast about, if you're thinking of selling, is the message. If that's the message, it's the wrong message. Like, who do you work with? What do you stand for? Who do you want to attract? Focus on those and be really efficient with it. And there's enough business to go around. There's 1.2 million transactions in the industry. If we charge the right fee and attract the right people, that conversation can go one way or the other. We either attract the right people and we charge the right fee, or we charge the right fee and we attract the right people. But you have to get the attraction part right to get the fee right. So a really, really interesting point there. I just want to touch on military a little bit, because obviously we got Clint at Avocado, and I've worked with a couple of military people. I'm very good friends with someone locally around here who does like fitness psychology, but comes from a Marine Corps background. And every time I talk, and I'm seeing the same with yourself from military, it seems like as an estate agent, we're quite poor at our efficiencies of processes. And we're not great at like learning new stuff. But anytime I deal with anyone from the military, they get the systematic efficiencies like straight away, and they seem to have an unbelievable ability to learn fast. Is that something that comes from the military training, or do you go into the military because you're born with that? And is there anything there that estate agents can take away that you're thinking this is something that comes out of that training, that process, that mindset, that culture that could be adopted a little bit for the leaders in agency?
Absolutely. So if you take, for example, Clint would have gone through the same scenario, right? Yeah, everybody's, with toy soldiers, we've all got action men, we've all got all of that, but it's not actually until you get punched in the face do you know how you're going to react. And so day one, week one of basic training to the end of 6 months, you are a completely different person. So if I talk about my experience of the parachute regiment selection, 96 of us started day one, week one, and 17 of us made it at the end, right? And so it's like, but what they do, you start up here where you're operating as a normal human being, and they take you down and down and down and down and down, and then give you a little bit of respite, and you sort of pop up. But then you're operating at a level much deeper than you thought you could operate. Then they take you down and down and down, and you just keep going down. And what they're actually doing is they're getting rid of the people that really won't be able to hack go into war. That's what they're doing. Can somebody be in a war scenario and still operate? Can that person, when I crossed the border into Iraq, I had 183 pounds on my back. I weigh 145. Yeah, there is no way I was doing that day one, week one of basic training. That was never going to happen, right? But now, at the end of it, I believe I can tear down mountains. I believe in my head, I'm only 5'7" in real life, but in my head, I'm 6'5". I'm bigger than you, Ian. Yeah, right. And that is where they take you emotionally. So can I operate when things are going really bad? And if I give the example of when I become a self-employed agent, I had £1,200 in my bank account to make sure that I could actually be a self-employed agent. And that was all the money I had. That was it. Right. And then started going on to process. Everything is process driven. But when I talk about that, I talk about what is the one thing Britain is very good at ultimately over the last 400 years, wrongly or rightly, is fighting, is going to war. So when we talk about processes today, those processes today of what is going to happen and see the punches coming well before they land probably has a history of 300 or 400 years of war. Yeah. So, and that's where it's come from. So it's like that monkey see, monkey do. Well, that clearly works. I'm going to follow it. And I think in property, it is, if we don't follow the process I'm asking you to follow, we are not going to get the right result. And equally, if we're not going to follow a process, which I'm telling you, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, that means I don't have to be accountable to you. So I can make it up as I go along. But because I'm telling you what the process is and what we should be doing, and now I'm accountable, me and you as a team, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, we are now in it together and we are following the same process, and we're obligated to each other to follow that process because now we know what good looks like, which has been built up on pain associated learning. And the other thing is talking about why the military guys learn so fast is because if I don't know something that I absolutely should know, I'm getting punched in the face. That's why they call it pain associated learning.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that means now, well, that's why I'm always looking for, when I'm watching your videos or I'm watching someone else's videos or I'm reading another book, right? The book, like, for example, what did you say to me? You said, let me find it very quickly whilst we're on this. Where is it? Oh, I can't see it. The book Excellence, you said on the podcast that we've recorded with each other. Is it Excellence?
Legacy.
Legacy. That's
Legacy.
it. What was the first thing I did?
When I got it.
When I got the book, right? And so now that's just arrived just yesterday. And I'm like, bosh, why would I not trust Ian Macbeth, an industry leader within the state agency, that's telling me about a book that's really helped him? So straight away, again, I'm going, well, if I don't read it, I'm metaphorically going to get punched in the face because there's going to be information in there that if I don't know, I can't help my clients moving forward. I can't protect them. Because there's always something. So again, process and learning from other people, monkey see, monkey do, what does success look like? I'm copying it as if it's my own. You know, I mentioned the thing, property is not in isolation, it's in competition. That's Tom Panos. That's not me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like, and so again, listen to $1 Million Agent. Well, what is that guy? That makes perfect sense. I'm going to use that on my next vow. Yeah. I'm not making it up myself. I'm learning from other people. And I think that's a lot to do with the actual military as well.
Yeah, because it's over hundreds and hundreds of years, processes and systems on a very, very mass scale, on a very high pressure, in literally a life or death environment that have been perfected. And yeah, it's a great way to finish the podcast because it's a great way to almost just recalibrate that mind as the moment that people have listened all the way through to think, okay, that's the level to think about. And if we can get close to that, because we're not doing life or death when we're doing properties, it's dreams or heartbreak, but it's not life or death. So it's a great standard to look at. And it's been really, really good, John, coming on the podcast. I really thank you. For people that want to learn more about you and more about your process, would you say TikTok through the eyes of a consumer, LinkedIn through the eyes of an agent? Is that a fair way to kind of search you, or would you just say one or the other?
Yeah, I'd say just reach out to me on TikTok. My life on social media is TikTok. I try to do LinkedIn as much as I can, but I'm not that dedicated to it. But yeah, if it's a buyer or if it's a seller, of course, TikTok, absolutely. That's where you're going to find me. As an agent, DM me. I've had agents reach out to me. Look, do you do mentorship? Admittedly, I don't do as a structured thing, because of course I'm so busy doing what I'm doing, right? But in terms of, do you know what? If you've got questions, just reach out and I'll answer your question. No problem. So it's not a structured thing, but certainly I'm more than happy to help anyone that wants to be helped, you know. And I'm always learning, even from people that maybe just not really know anything. They may ask a question and I thought, well, wow, I never actually thought of that. And that's so profound. Actually, how can I work with what somebody else who otherwise is a novice, what did they say? So yeah, TikTok, and that is it. The other thing I would do as well, if you're an agent and you're thinking, well, are you really that ballsy, John? Go to my website and have a look there, and then see if I'm really ballsy or not. And that's johnsavage.co.uk. And then just have a look there, because you will see instantly I'm talking to my ideal client and I don't deviate.
You've also got another URL, I think, called No More Shit Estate Agents. So that is I changed the title because that title was really geared towards possibly agents, actually, as opposed to actually sellers. So the book is the same, but the title is different. So the book now is How to Sell Your House Fast Without Underselling, with an agent you can trust in a time frame you control. And that in there is got 21 questions. And by the way, if I'm an agent listening to this right now, even though that book is geared towards sellers, there's 21 questions in there that if you know the answers to those 21 questions that I'm giving sellers in your area, you better fucking know those answers. And if you know those answers, you are going to win a lot more instructions than you lose, and at the right money. And also it means that you're going to get paid because you're in proper control as well, whilst protecting people. So I'm reading those 21 questions if I'm an agent. It's hard to hear 21 and not go tut 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 afterwards, but so solid, crew. That's that's your fault. John, love the episode. Thank you for coming on. Really appreciate it. And I'm sure we will see you again soon at a variety of different estate agency events. So thanks for coming on, mate.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me, guys.
Cheers. Thanks, John. And that is thank you to John Savage for joining us today. We talked on the intro, Ian, passion, enthusiasm, but also a very clear mindset of something that you talk about in terms of the ideal client. He knows the client that is going to work for him. He knows the client that isn't, and really efficient with his time by the sounds of things from what he said, because he's not wanting to waste time. And actually, if you get a client that does fill out 65 questions on a Google form, my God, they're going to be motivated.
Yeah. And I like the phrase that he mentions about he's trying to repel people.
Yeah.
Because he's so savage in the target audience that he wants, that he's also savage in the target audience he doesn't want. He doesn't want to work with. He can't work with. He doesn't see the value in working with. They're not his client. And, that's obviously that's the same hymn sheet that I've been singing for the last 5-6 years as well. So we've got a lot of synergy in that. But he's on a slightly different level of that, because it's him in how he operates. But yeah, I really like that. I think, if you think about that, I'm trying to repel the people I don't want to work with so that I can home in beacon style hit the people that I do want to work with. It's a marketing mindset. It's a niche mindset, but it's the opposite of how most agents operate, which is blanket canvas and try and pull everyone in, throw a massive net out there and just see what we can get. His is the opposite mindset of that. So he's a unique agent, and I love that. I think it's great that we've got those characters out there that are now able to commentate and have a bit of an influence, through social media, through his TikTok channel, through his podcast, through coming on podcasts like this and sort of being a commentator across socials, because now we get to see a different opinion to the norm, don't we, really? So
yeah, and when there's someone that is so different from the majority of corporate and high street estate agents, there's always something that we can learn from. And I think you listen to his sales process, and you listen to, even just to how he talks, and he talked about how he dresses, how he talks, how some clients don't like him swearing. We can all take something from that in terms of focusing in on our ideal client. And also there's so many learnings when someone does it so differently to the norm. So I think it was a really fantastic chat. I think it was one that everybody listening will have taken something from.
Yeah, I think John has done a great job at building a really strong personal brand and identity with both the industry and with the public, which is not an easy thing to do, but he's managed to do that. And he's done it through carving out what he believes in and just living and dying by that. In the same way, like a Gary Vee is, this is how I operate. In the same way, Chris Watkins is almost repetitively boring and consistent in the same message. John's adapted that same really good digital social presence, and you can only credit him for it. And talking off camera, he's got a property coming to the market every Saturday, all the way up to the end of February, starting March, bar, I think he said Valentine's Day, which he's held off for the missus. So, what he's doing is working, because he's now got a waiting list of sellers, and how many agents would love to be in that position. So, as much as people might go, not sure about that, it bloody works.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, all those people that you mentioned there, we talk about it all the time on the podcast, it comes down to consistency. And he's, consistent in his posting, but also really consistent in his messaging. Just before we wrap, he mentioned Legacy, which I've read, and I know that you've read. Really interesting development, I think, and that book is related to. I don't know if you saw, but the All Blacks sacked their head coach recently, and there's an interesting article about it on the BBC Sport as to how South Africa have knocked New Zealand off the perch, and some of those elements that they talk about in Legacy, the book, are actually referenced in that article as maybe standards slipping a little bit. So well worth you and anyone else that's listening just searching out on BBC Sport that article, and it's an interesting little follow-up from the book. So I thought I'd just mention that because that's something I was reading with me a cup of tea at the weekend, I think it was. So
yeah, I'll check that out. No, I love that book. I think it's definitely a book which all estate agency leaders should read, because it really does help you develop a culture that you want, a winning mindset culture as well. Although, yes, they've knocked them off the perch now, New Zealand is still the most successful sporting team of all sports ever, with their percentage and the conversion of win rate. And there's something in that, right? There has to be.
Well, especially if you consider the size of the country against the other countries that they're playing. And it does talk about this in that BBC Sport article as well. They are so successful, but they have overachieved so much within that as well. So yeah, I read that book in about 2 days, because obviously I'm into rugby and it just ticks so many of the boxes. But I think it's a really good learning for anybody that is trying to build a business with a really strong culture, or has a minor interest in rugby or the All Blacks. So yeah, go out and get Legacy. I think it's a really strong cultural book to try and set some foundations, but also follow it up, because it's interesting how things have evolved over the last few years. A massive thank you once again to John for joining us today. As you know, we do this podcast because we love the industry. We want to see people improve and get better within it. If you have enjoyed today's episode, please share it out on socials. Reach out to either John, Ian, or myself. I'm Mark Worrell. He's Ian Macbeth. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you again next week.